as we're about to share our testimony, we ask, oh God, that it may not just be mere words, but it will communicate spirit. Whoever that comes across this testimony, oh God, whatever they are being troubled with, whatever they are being challenged with, let our testimony bring hope, let our testimony bring life. Jesus said that the flesh profited nothing. The words that I speak to you, they are spirit and they are life. Let this testimony bring life into their ears, into the lives of those that will listen. In the name of Jesus, we thank you. Bless you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Hi family, my name is Elisha Japong. This is my wife, Priscilla Japong, and we are the Japongs. I guess I encountered KFT, Kingdom for Tabernacle International Ministries, through my wife. In 2017, she was bothering me about going to a church. At that time, my girlfriend, I had recently moved to Stanford because of work. The commute from New York to Stanford was a bit much. I didn't know God was trying to do something, so He occasioned me moving all the way from the Bronx to Stanford. And then my wife had heard about KFT, but I'll allow her to talk about that.
Right. So I heard about KFT through a friend. In 2017, I believe it was, my husband and I were dating. We had broken up. And a friend of mine called me and was like, girl, you need to get over him. So join this 21-day fast and pray about your marriage. So the day before the fast, she called me and she told me that. And I decided, what the heck, I have nothing to lose. So I started doing the fast. And then literally that fast changed my life. I was in college at the time and I would literally lock myself in my college dorm room. I would pray like crazy. I couldn't even speak in tongues at the time. I prayed in my own understanding the entire fast. But my prayer topic was receiving the gift of tongues. Although I did not receive the gift of tongues during that fast, after the fast, I decided to give him another chance. And a few months later, he proposed, and then we joined the fast again that year. And that's really where our testimony begins.
Let me talk about how I went to KFT in the classroom. So I paid a visit to KFT in the classroom.
Because of me.
Because of her. She pushed me to go. And I think prophetess or apostle at that time was preaching about worship. The message cut me so deep, but sin at that time was so enjoyable. it was enjoyable to live in sin. So I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back to this church, because the church that I was in before, I didn't get so convicted when I was living in the life of sin. So I decided to leave and didn't show up again until
the
Apostle,
grand opening of 215.
Yeah, 215.
Yeah. That was also because of me.
Where Apostle famously remembered me coming to dance in the front, and never showing up again.
Yep. But that both times was
because of me. Yes.
I was following Prophetess and Apostle and the church on Instagram at the time. So every time I saw that there was going to be a big event, I would always tell him and push him to go. I would nag him until he decided to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was finally when I started coming to church on Sundays. I'm like, okay, I can do Sundays. But then my wife was also pushing me to come to Fire Nights. I'm like, Fridays are my relaxing days. After a long week of work, I just want to go to the movies, to chill. I just want to stay
But that
home.
was after we got married, though.
That was after we got married?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think we went to Fire Night before we got married. So in 2018, we joined the fast engaged. And during that fast, we were really just praying towards our marriage and praying really about just like our purpose, what God wanted to use us to do once we got married. And then on the 21st day of that fast, which I believe was the day of the 12-hour prayer marathon, after the 5 a.m. prayers that day, I went to sleep and I had a dream that Apostle had come to me and my husband in the dream, and he told he prayed for us. But before he prayed for us, he told us that the Lord was going to give us a testimony that was going to shock this world. Those are the words that he used. And he said, and then he prayed for us, and he prayed that we would have the grace to endure to the end. That was the prayer that he prayed. So when I woke up from that dream, I didn't really pray about it or anything. I wrote it down, and then I pondered on it, and then I just kind of just forgot about it. I kind of just forgot about that dream. And then that night, by the grace of God, when we went to the 12-hour prayer marathon is when I finally received the gift of tongues. So I believe that from that day, the Lord started to empower me to go through or to make it through what we were about to go through.
Yeah, before encountering KFT, my prayers was a 30-second prayer. I had a prayer that I did for eating, for sleeping, even for traveling. It was the same line, just make an adjustment somewhere, and then that was pretty much it. KFT, encountering KFT instilled prayer in me, but even that prayer was just, when we were in church, Sundays and fire nights.
At the beginning.
At the beginning,
yeah. At the beginning, yeah. At the beginning, we really would just pray like, when we woke up in the morning, before we went to bed, at church, sometimes after church, we would pray, but we weren't really in depth. We weren't really like even going to fire nights really at the beginning. I think it wasn't until the marriage fast after we got married. So we got married in July, and that July, August, September, and October, I didn't get my period. And that's when we started to realize that something was wrong. So we joined the marriage fast again that year. And then we started to, when we realized something was wrong, we started to really try to pray to break it. And also, I think that's when we started to pray for children. And we started to pray for children. And then I think that's when we started to actually attend fire nights and really start to take prayer more seriously. So at that point, I think we instilled like prayer 30 minutes before we went to bed or something like that.
So we were praying 25 to 30 minutes every night. My wife was so ready to have a child. I still just wanted to chill for a little bit. I just wanted 1 year to just enjoy this marriage. 1 to 2 years, probably my mouth. But my wife was already ready to have children. So even though we were praying, I wasn't 100%. I wasn't really bothered because I knew I wasn't ready yet.
And that desire for children actually, in me, actually was sparked by Prophetess. When I saw her literally just having kids back to back to back. Before I got married, I was like, kids, if I have them, great. Not that I didn't want them, but like, if I have kids right away, then great. If not, then whatever. But when I saw Prophetess literally just doing ministry, having kids back to back to back, it sparks a desire in you. I feel like as a woman, to see her doing life so beautifully, you kind of just want to do it too.
But you wanted to have kids way back. You were ready.
I wanted to have kids, but I wasn't thirsty. Like I wasn't desperate. Like that's the thing. I wasn't desperate for it. But when I saw Prophetess, that's really what because when I was really, really little, I want to say like 10, I would be like, I don't want kids. Like that's what I would say when I was little. But then when I started to attend KFT and I saw Prophetess doing her thing, I was like, ooh, I desired that, I think, a little bit more. But yeah, we did the fast, and then we started to attend church regularly. And then I think by December is when we were into it.
Right.
Then that February, I think it was like Valentine's Day or something, Love Day. That Sunday is when Apostle and Prophetess were praying for women that were having like menstrual cycle issues and everything. And in the midst of praying for those women is when they called for the women in the church that were married and struggling for the fruit of the womb to come forward for them to pray for them. Now, at the time, we had only been married a couple of months. And so, you know, and like he said, he wasn't really, you know, wasn't really into having kids right away. And I had the desire for children at that time, like it had arisen in me. But I was like, oh, we've only been married a couple of months, so it's really not that serious. Some women, it takes them a little bit longer than others to get pregnant once they get married. So I didn't think that I needed to go up. Right. I didn't think I fell into that category. Yeah. So initially, I didn't want to go. And I remember I asked you, I was like, should I go? Mm-hmm. And then you were like, I mean, if you want to. Yeah, you were like, I mean, if you want to. So I think the Holy Spirit at the time was speaking to me. So
you just went.
I went, yes. And when we went, Apostle and Prophetess prayed for us. Mm-hmm. It was me, Sister Nana, and Sister Jen at the time. They called the husbands forward to stand behind us, and they prayed for us. And they said that year we would conceive before the end of that year.
Those of you who are married, I want you to come to the front. The rest move back. And I want you to touch your womb and cry out. And those of you who are not up here, you're praying that God, if you are alive in this house, the three of them must be pregnant this year. This year. This year. This is a heart's cry. This topic is so dear to me. As I just laid on the altar, I said, God, I don't know how it feels to want a child and worry if you might have an issue or not. And the same grace that you've given to me, let it flow. Whatever was wrong inside of me that you fixed before marriage, those who are not married, you are crying out that, Lord, do it. The Lord will touch you. He's rearranging things inside of there. And as a sign that he has heard you, when these three come to give their testimonies, know that yours is settled in the name of Jesus. Begin to open your mouth and cry out to God. You married women, cry out to God. Cry out to him. Cry out like Hannah cried. Cry out. Cry out. Cry out. Cry out. Cry out. Oh, sovereign Lord. Oh, sovereign Lord. Do it for us. Hey. Hey. Rearrange things. Rearrange. 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 Multiples. 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 Double for their trouble. Yes. 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 Let the grace flow, oh God. Yes. Yes. Let the grace flow. Let the grace flow. Let this grace flow. Jennifer, let it flow over you. Hey, let it flow. Let it flow. Let it flow. Lord, as a sign that you've heard us, these three women must be pregnant in 2020. Lord, show yourself strong. Make a way, oh God. Make a way, oh God. Make a way, oh God. You, God, who has done it for me, do it for them. You, God, who has done it for Sarah, even in her old age, do it for them. Oh, Hannah cried out. They are crying out.
that was 2020, February of 2020. And then in May, at the beginning of May, is when we found out that we were pregnant for the first time. And we were really, really excited. I found out I was at work and I started to feel really, really dizzy because I had a COVID patient. And labor and delivery, while we were in the room and my patient was delivering, I had to wear like layers and layers and layers because that was early COVID. So I was wearing all these layers of PPE and I started to feel really, really nauseous and dizzy. So I took everything off and I went out of the room. I told my nurse manager and, they did my vital signs. They put me in a room and everything. And they told me like, Priscilla, you might have COVID. So they sent me home. And then I did a COVID test on my way home. When I got home, the people called me and they were like, oh, your COVID test was negative.
Wait, was it that day that I sprayed you with Lysol?
No, that was not that day. That was a different day. So they told me my COVID test is negative. So I called my OB, who I worked with at the time. I actually saw her at work. And I called her and I was like, my COVID test is negative. What should I do? And she was like, take a pregnancy test. And I was like, no way, there's no way I'm pregnant. So she told me to take it. I went ahead, I took it, and it actually came back positive. We called her back, and then she was like, come back tomorrow. I want to do a scan. She was super, super excited, and we were excited too.
We were very excited. It was the first time we saw 2 lines on the pregnancy test. We were very, very excited. Didn't know that was when the warfare actually began.
Right. So we went the following day to the appointment. And when she did the ultrasound, I remember the person that did the ultrasound, she had like a piece of paper. And on the piece of paper, it said like number of children in uterus or something like that. And the person wrote down, like they didn't tell anything to me and my husband, but they wrote down 0 and they put the paper down. So before the OB came in, I immediately knew that something was gonna be off. So I started to get really scared because I saw the number 0. And then when the OB came in, she was like, the pregnancy test is positive. They did one in the office. They said it's positive, but there's no baby.
See pregnancy sign on the test, and the ultrasound is saying something else. Yeah, it was a very confusing moment for us.
So she told us come back in 2 days because sometimes the dates could be off or whatever. So come back in 2 days. So I think that was like May 5th or something like that. No, she told us to come back in a week. She told us come back in a week because the dates might be off. So I believe that was like the 5th. The 7th, this was during the 40-day fast. On the 7th, after the 5 a.m. prayers, is when I had a dream. And in that dream, I was bleeding. I woke up and indeed, I went to the bathroom and I was bleeding. But I didn't think anything of it. I was like, bleeding happens in early pregnancy, whatever. So I just put the thought to the side. I prayed a small little prayer and I went to sleep. And then I had another dream that I was cramping. I woke up and I was cramping. I did the same thing. I was like, it's not that serious. Women cramp early pregnancy. So I went back to sleep. And then the third dream I had was that someone had broken into our apartment at the time while we were asleep, and the person had taken a package from us and was trying to get away. And I woke my husband up, and we were able to like fight the person and kill the person, but the package was gone. And it was like a really, really big package, like it was from the floor to ceiling, and the package was gone. So I woke up from that. I was gonna go to the bathroom and come back and say my little 2x4 prayer and go back to sleep. But on the way back from the bathroom, I literally was hit with a pain on my left side. I fell to the floor. I had to crawl into our bedroom to wake him up.
As a husband, that sight was the most painful sight to see. Your wife being in so much pain and you're helpless in the situation. There was nothing I could do. There was no amount of prayers There was no amount of words. She was just
And you tried to pray too,
I did.
screamed at you.
She was just
I yelled at you to call the ambulance or something.
Yeah, she wanted me to call the ambulance.
Yeah.
The sight, I can still get it out of my head. It was so agonizing, and to feel so helpless in the situation was another thing for us to swallow. And I believe we decided to go to the ED.
Yeah.
And while you were in the back, were you sitting by myself? While you're on the back, you were like, let's just call AP and FL.
Yeah. Because we hadn't even told them we were pregnant.
No, we hadn't.
We wanted to surprise them with the ultrasound. So we hadn't even told them yet that we were pregnant.
Yeah,
we wanted to surprise them. And we wanted to surprise them. And so, you know, we were like, let's call them and tell them everything that was happening.
Yeah.
But I think when we called, I think they were like...
I called Apostle. It was at 7 in the morning or 7:30 in the morning. I was surprised he picked up. Was it a Monday?
I don't remember.
I'm not really sure, but he picked up. He heard what was going on, and then he began to go in major declarations and prayers. So I think he was with us on the phone until we got to the hospital.
The ED, yeah.
And then you had to go in by yourself because it was the peak of COVID season, so only one person had to be in there by themselves.
Yeah, so that was hard for me, being in there. I remember my phone was dying, so I couldn't even really make calls because I was afraid that my phone would die. I didn't have a charger or anything. So when I first got in there, you know, they put in an IV and everything. They rushed me to an ultrasound. And once again, they didn't find a baby. They brought me back into the room, and the OB on call came and was like, you know, they didn't find a baby in your womb, but there's significant bleeding in your abdomen, so we think that it's an ectopic pregnancy. They couldn't even see it.
The right side, right?
It was my left. But they said that, you know, there was significant bleeding in my abdomen on one side, and so they think it's an ectopic pregnancy, but just to be on the safe side, we should just terminate. And then, you know, because she was saying that if we didn't, and if I walked out of the ED, I could die, I could lose my fallopian tube, I could lose my womb. It was a whole bunch of scary stuff that she was basically telling me. So I decided to, or I think I called you and we talked about it, and, you know, we said the best option is to preserve my life and just try again later. So we went ahead with the medication that they offered.
And it was still a shock, but we thank God that I think there are stories where people had a ectopic pregnancy and they had to get their whole wombs taken out, damaged some part of their fallopian tube. So just the fact that my wife was alive and she was with me, I was content.
So when we were leaving, they were saying like, oh, you might need to come back and get more, you know, you have to come back in a couple of days for us to check in on you. But by the grace of God, none of that had to happen. It was one and done. We went home that day, and I think it was pretty traumatic for the both of us when we got home. Like, that's when we really realized what had just happened.
Yeah, what just happened?
Yeah, I was a hot mess for like 2 to 3 days. I was
like a week.
I was a pretty hot mess. Prophetess at the time was blowing up our phones. Like, she was sending us all these encouraging text messages, and she was telling us it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay. And she gave us a word that the Lord would not fail us.
I don't know how she had so much capacity. Being a mother of many children, biological children and spiritual children, she just it looked like she only cared about us at that moment.
She, you know, I think she was really a mother to us. Apostle was really a father to us in that time, and she checked in on me. They both checked in on us for like, I think, a good month straight. Every single day they checked in on us to make sure that we were okay. And I remember I was telling her that I didn't even want to go to church because I felt so bad that I didn't even want to go to church. I didn't want to, I didn't feel like I had the capacity in me to serve at the time. and Prophetess encouraged me to come to church. And I believe that Sunday when we went to church is when she preached Beautiful Timing.
Yes.
And that message wrecked me.
You see, what prophecy does, it unveils the revelation of God's will for you and your life. And so what it also does is sounds the alarm for the enemy. And so anytime a prophecy comes, you have to know that a challenge will come. And so God is saying that I need you not to faint. I need you to understand that for a while you will suffer. I need you to understand that in my timing, I make all things beautiful. When you have this understanding, you don't grow weary quickly. You do not grow weary quickly.
I don't even know how I made it through that Sunday. It wrecked me.
Yeah, there was another message that Apostle was preaching. I forgot the title, but the only thing that rings in my head is, if you've prayed about it and nothing seems to be changing, pray one more time.
Yeah.
You fasted about it, and the situation is not changing, fast one more time.
Yeah.
Because we were like all the prayers,
Right.
all the fastings.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it was in the
It
midst
was
of a
in the
40-day
midst of a
fast.
40-day fast.
How
Yeah.
do you lose your child in the midst of a 40-day fast?
Yeah.
But words of encouragement came subsequent Sundays, and
Yeah.
it kept us going for another
wow.
set piece of time.
Yeah. So for the next couple of months, we were, trusting God. We were praying towards, having another child. And I think we got over it pretty quickly. Like we dealt with it very well because it was the first time that it had happened.
Right.
So we were like, it's okay. It's just a roadblock. And, we will overcome it. And we went on, we moved on from it. And then in September of that year.
1 second. So I believe that's the time where we shifted from praying just 20
Yes.
minutes a day to like an hour,
Yeah.
sometimes an hour and a half. We decided to fast on Saturdays because we were both born on Saturdays, and that's an advice that any parent will give you, to fast on the day that you were born. So we were fasting every Saturday. There was a point where we decided to pray for like 4 hours on a Saturday morning. We started at 6, ended up at 10. I got books on faith because I felt like maybe it happened because we didn't have faith.
In September of that year is when I had another dream, and in that dream, I had gone into some like weird dark alley somewhere, but the long and short of that dream is that I had recovered my package that was stolen from me in the dream that I had months ago. But this time it was like a very, very small package. And I remember when I finally acquired it, I started to run, and I appeared on this big land, and there was like light everywhere, and it was a whole bunch of like KFT members came, and they were all really, really, really excited with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few weeks after that, I realized that, my period was supposed to come, but it didn't come. And then it came, but then it was weird. So I was like, something is off. And my husband was like, you should take a pregnancy test. And I was like, no, there's no way, because I'm already bleeding. But I decided to just go ahead, take the pregnancy test. And then shockingly, it came back positive. Yeah. And so I called my OB. I told her what was going on, and she said, come to the office and we'll do an ultrasound. So I went to the office the following day. We did the ultrasound, and the same thing that happened the first time happened again. She said the pregnancy test is positive, but there's no baby. She had even sent me to the ED to confirm, and I went to the ED. They did an ultrasound there too, and they found the same exact thing. There was no baby. So she told me, because of what happened last time, just prepare for the worst. Yeah.
I just, at that point, it was like, whoever is monitoring us knows what's going on before we found out. But that was another obstacle or pain we had to overcome.
Yeah. For me, it hurt because, the first time we just got over it. pretty quickly. It was like, okay, this happened, it's one and done, right? And the Bible says affliction shall not happen a second time. So when this was happening a second time, I started to become angry because I was like, I'm doing I seemed to be doing everything that I needed to do for this to work. I was serving in church. I, was praying. I was fasting. I was doing, for me, what I needed to do, but still it wasn't working. And, this was happening again during another fast. This was during the 21-day fast. We found out we were pregnant and we were already miscarrying. So for me, it was angering. So I didn't even know where at the time to really put my anger. I didn't want to be angry with God, but I felt like, I felt abandoned, really. Like I felt like a child whose parent had just abandoned them. I was like, Lord, are you not hearing my prayers? Like what is happening? So when we told Apostle and Prophetess this time around, they prayed for us and they said, this time it's going to be different. When we went for the initial ultrasound, the doctor said, prepare for the worst, but she gave us an appointment to come back in 2 days just to confirm if it would continue to get worse or if it would get better. So the night before we were supposed to go back, we went to Mission Mansion for Apostle and Prophetess to pray for us in person. And they laid hands on me and they prayed that wherever the child was, that child would implant in my womb right then and there. That's the prayer that they prayed. And so we went home and I was trusting God, and we went back the following day or the next morning, and the doctor did another ultrasound and she was like, oh, there's actually an embryo. Something is there. And so she was really excited. She was surprised because you usually don't make a quick turnaround like that. So she was like, oh, something is actually there. So, you guys just hold on to faith, but prepare for the worst. It's like she couldn't not say prepare for the worst. So we left that appointment and then we went into the 3-day weekend of that fast, and we were praying, the 12-hour prayer marathon, and I was up there on the balcony praying through all the nausea, through all the symptoms. I was praying and I was like, Lord, even as I'm here and praying like this, like, don't let it end the same way that the first one did. So we made it through that weekend by the grace of God, but I think a week or two later, unfortunately, it ended in another miscarriage.
Again, being a husband and your wife going through this, being utterly helpless to help the situation, all you can do is pray. It was even hard at times to find the right words to even encourage my wife. It was sometimes extremely difficult to find even a scripture to encourage her, because it was just tough. But I just believed that, I trusted that, with time, healing will come, and all I had to do was to just try to be there for her, although not understanding in totality what she was actually going through. There is no way we as men will understand fully a woman going through a miscarriage feels like, but the best I could do was try to be there. But for me, the most difficult part was how to differentiate between the faith and being there for your wife. In terms of, do you encourage how your wife is feeling, or you put a stop to it and say, stop it, God will do it, let's stop, crying, we've cried enough, let's keep pushing, let's have faith. That was the difficult moment for me, to find the fine line between those two items.
So after the second time, I got into a really dark place. I really felt numb. I think is the best word to describe it. I went about my day to day. I didn't find joy in anything that I did. And even coming, like I would come to church, I would talk to people, I would laugh, but behind all of that, I was in a very, very dark place. And the enemy really started to attack my mind. I started to feel like hopeless. I felt helpless. I felt less than, even when people would encourage me, because at that point it had been like, I think almost a full year that people knew that we were trying for kids, and the people that knew us outside of church, it had been over a year that we've been married. So the expectation had come, and people would start to ask questions, and people at my job would start to ask me questions, and they would start to make little comments because, those that got married after me were having kids or were pregnant, and they would be like, Priscilla, like, what's going on? Is it that you don't want it or what? And I think that those comments started to really get to me, and I felt mocked. And I felt like the Lord's word had failed in my life. I felt embarrassed that, although people didn't know exactly what was going on, people knew that at least that the children were not coming. So I felt really embarrassed about that. And so I got into a really dark place. I became obsessed with the idea of having kids. Like, that's all that I could think of all the time. And working in labor and delivery did not help.
Did not help at all.
Because I was surrounded by kids, pregnant women all the time. And so it was really all consuming. And I remember I would literally cry myself to sleep all the time. And that's kind of what he was talking about, because when I would get into that place where I would just be sobbing, I felt a lot of the times like he was no help. Like, I wanted someone who was going to be there and, not encourage me, but I think at the time what I really wanted was like a pity partner.
Yeah.
And he was kind of just like, get up and stop crying. And that really frustrated me. And I think it began to like cause a little bit of like a friction.
Yeah,
between
that's what
us.
I was saying. It's just hard to find the right line.
Yeah.
Do you, feel that same emotions? You have that pity party with your wife, or you arise as a man and say, stop it, we need to pray.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not going to yield anything. We need to just stand and keep praying.
Yeah. And I wanted to, at the time, talk about my feelings a lot. And that's something that I think universally, worldwide, men are not good at talking about feelings. And so I wanted to talk about my feelings a lot. So what I actually ended up doing was I started to confide actually in Sister Nana a lot during that season. And she was, a really, really good confidant to me at that time, because she kind of knew what I was going through.
She understood
because
more than me.
She understood, and also she, she's a woman, so she allowed me to speak. And after all the venting that I would do is when she would encourage me and tell me everything's gonna be okay, and she would pray with me a lot too during that season. So that was really from like the end of 2020 all the way to like the end of 2021. That year was really, really hard for me in particular. Yeah.
Are you still working at labor and delivery? So
Yeah.
you are still seeing kids being born. You were delivering a lot of babies. So that was tougher on you, I would say, more than me.
Yeah.
I was just working with computers.
Yeah.
That time.
So I think it was
In
at
2021?
at the beginning of 2021. I think we had encouraged ourselves to a certain point, and we were ready to hit the ground running again. We were ready to really dive into having kids and trying again.
Yeah.
And then that year nothing happened.
Yeah.
Nothing at all.
There was no sign of pregnancy anywhere.
Nothing.
I could count the number of pregnancy tests that we bought.
Millions.
Millions of it.
Millions.
Clear Blue.
Not you naming the brands.
Yeah,
So unnecessary.
They're very expensive, like $20.
We bought a lot because
lot of
every month we were like, this is the month. Like literally every month we'd be like, this is the month, this is the one. And then it wouldn't happen. And I would like...
It got to a point I even thought the Target brand was faulty. I wanted to get the grocery store brand, which in my mind was better, but
Yeah, nothing.
Since, bro, yeah, there was nothing. There were times we were seeing lines where there were no lines.
We're like, it was
Things
bad.
were just happening in our minds. It was just one line, but for some reason, we would see two lines. We would hold it to the light this way. I'm like, no, I see a line over here. I'm like, nah, there's no line.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole 2021.
I think we were desperate. At that point, I was desperate for it. I was literally every single month I would cry and cry and cry and cry, and I was like, Lord, when is this gonna stop? Like, and that year too is when we tried a whole bunch of stuff. That year, people would come to us and tell us, like, if you do this, it'll work. If you do that, it'll work. And it seemed the more we did to help the situation, it actually made it worse. Like, we took some like herb that someone had recommended that didn't work. People, were telling us things to do spiritually. They were like, oh, prepare your nursery or whatever. It didn't work. We
bought clothes in faith. We
bought the house in faith.
We bought the house in faith.
None of it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't terminally say none of it.
Yeah, but
maybe we're preparing ourselves, but what needed to happen was more spiritual than physical things. So yeah, in 2021, I think that was still the same year that you calculated the number of women that got married after you and all got pregnant. I even wanted to ward my wife off Instagram for a while because
it was everybody. I think when you're waiting, it seems everybody on the face of this earth is having a child. Like, I don't know why, I think you just notice it more. Mm-hmm. And it seemed at the time like people from high school, people from college, people from everywhere. And I think it's the same thing too, even when you're waiting for like marriage, it just seems everybody's getting married and you're still there and you're waiting.
Yeah, it was actually, I was annoyed at some point. Hey, this lady just got married 2 months ago. Look at her, she's already pregnant. And yeah, it was a whole lot in that year.
And then, yeah, that year was that. Yeah, I don't even know what to say.
We went a whole year. We even tried to time. I think that's the year we tried to time ovulation.
We were doing like ovulation tests, like the whole shebang.
We tried to time a lot of stuff.
I think we were thinking that something that we could do would help. But it was really, God was doing his thing, because even during that year, we increased our prayer time. Yeah. Again, we fasted more that year again. We did, outside of the corporate fast that we were doing as a church, we were also doing like our own fast. Yeah. You were doing your own fast, I was doing my own fast, and we were doing fast together. Mm-hmm. But one thing though, I will say that year, now that I remember, is that 21-day fast is actually when I got the name for our baby. That's when one of the days of that fast, I was waking up and I literally audibly heard the Lord say her name to me. Mm-hmm. And I wrote it down, and I thought that it was like one of those names of God, like, Jehovah Shalom or something. So I wrote it down and I was like, I'm gonna like Google it later. Mm-hmm. And then when I later Googled it is when I realized that it is a Hebrew girl's name. Mm-hmm. And it means God is my father. And so I was like, I knew from even before I got married that the Lord told me I was gonna have a girl. That I was gonna have my first child was gonna be a girl. So when the Lord gave me the name, I was like, okay, then it might be happening sooner rather than later.
Yeah, even in 2021, throughout all what even made it harder was the dreams that we were having. Yeah. Seeing children, the dreams of us having kids. There were also on the side a lot of demonic dreams. A lot of witchcraft type dreams that gave us more things to pray concerning. But in all, God was delivering us in layers from 2020, 2021.
And that year too, the church prayed for us a lot.
Yes.
The church prayed for us a lot.
Like, even to the point where we were even tired.
I was over it. I was so over it. At the beginning, I was like, yeah, pray for us. But it got to the point where I was so embarrassed every time that, you know, apostle and prophetess would call us up, that it got to the point where I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
Like when they would call me, I would cringe and I would literally physically want to run away, but I knew that I couldn't. And they would pray for us literally all the time. And I think that like being in the spotlight like that made me like, I think it kind of made me feel like things were worse, but I didn't know that God was actually doing something with all those prayers.
Yeah, God wanted us to mount up. There was a point he wanted us to get to before he released what he wanted to release, because he didn't want us to mess it up.
And now that I look back, being called up was such a blessing, because people took our prayers personally and they took it into their own closets. And so many people, you know, since then have come up to us and have told us how they prayed for us during that season, and how they continued to pray for us even up until they found out that we had actually delivered. And I think those prayers were all filling up our prayer bank, like in heaven. It was all filling up. Every single time someone went on their knees for us, God actually did remember us.
See, this is serious. Priscilla, war for your child. War for your child. Do not be embarrassed, because when the Lord lifts you up, when the Lord lifts you up, when the Lord lifts you up, this will be one of our greatest testimonies. Elisha, a time is coming. You will laugh till you laugh anymore. Today we are warring. We are warring. See, God is so strategic. When they came, they didn't know that there was an issue with their childbearing. But God is so strategic to bring them to a fruitful center. Today, whatever system doesn't want to work, Priscilla, the way you deliver other people's babies, the set time, it's your time and it's your turn. You will conceive. You will give birth. Jesus. See, I want you to pray for this couple. Do you know how embarrassing it is? Do you know how much shame they go through? Do you know every time they smile, they're reminded of this topic? I want you to put your stomach down for them. Cry out to God. See them as your own blood and say that, Lord, do it for them. Pray. Jesus.
One thing about KFT is when it comes to praying for kids, everybody takes it seriously.
Yeah.
Everybody takes it seriously. I quite remember Brother Mike's, his voice was ringing in my ear that night. He was on the mic, and he's the only one I could hear. He was going in as if it was his own problem.
Yeah. So that year, at the end of that year in December, is when I had a conversation with Prophetess. And she said, you know, Priscilla, you guys should go and get checked out. You guys should go to a fertility, doctor and see what they say.
But I started saying that.
You had mentioned it before, yeah. So when Prophetess told me that, I was, when she told me, I was like, Prophetess, I feel like if I go, it means that I don't believe that God can do it. And when I said that, she was like, no, you're not going to intervene. You're just going to get checked out, because if they find something is physically wrong, then we know how to attack it. So January, we made the appointment, and February, we began to do the testing. And I would call out for work all the time. I would drive to various places all over Connecticut to get certain different tests done that could only be done in certain places. And so it started to actually give me hope, because I was like, okay, we're doing something. We're physically doing something that can actually make a change. So we started the treatment, or we started the testing, and everything came back
Let me
normal.
say something that I haven't told you before. So the reason why that came into my mind, that we should, just get tested out. It got to a point that as a man, I was starting to feel like maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not there. I need some help. Maybe I'm not there. I'm not at the point where I need to be, physically. So that's one of the things that spurred me into having us getting checked out.
So we started doing all of the testing, and the testing, every test that we did either came back normal or was above the value that it needed to be. So the fertility doctors actually said to me, 3 of them said to me on separate occasions, like, I honestly don't know why you're not pregnant, or you haven't had a child yet. That really confirmed to me that this was a spiritual fight that we were fighting. And when they did all the testing, they came back to us and they presented us the least invasive option, which they basically said was the best option for us, since there was nothing that they could even physically find that was wrong. So they offered us to take a medication every month that would basically help me with ovulation. There was one oral, and then there was one that I would inject. And when they told us, we went to Bishop and Prophetess, we spoke to them, and they were like, if you feel led to do it, if the Lord is releasing you guys to do it, then you guys should do it. They basically was like, the ball is in your court if you guys feel led to do it. So we talked about it, and we were like, we're gonna try.
One of the things that Prophetess hammered on was no IVF.
Yeah.
No IVF.
Yeah.
Because she had known people that did IVF and still nothing happened.
Well, I think she said that because I think she really trusted that God would do it for us. So I think that she knew that we wouldn't ever have to get to that point, because she knew in her heart of hearts, like, one thing that she always told me throughout all those years, that was, I know God can do it for you. So they told us to do it. We started doing it. We did it for 2 months and nothing happened. I remember the second month that we did it, before we found out the results, we actually went out on a date, because when they called with the day they told us they were going to call with the results, we went out so that we wouldn't get sad if they called us and said that it didn't work. And so that day, when they did call us and say that it didn't work, I didn't even have time to be sad, because we were out and about. We were at the museum and out eating. So we had a good time that day. But when we got home is when we talked about it, and we were like, yeah, we're going to stop.
Yeah. If God could not do it at that point,
we decided to stop. That was in June. I think a little bit before June, we decided to stop. We told Apostle and Prophetess we're not doing it anymore. And Prophetess said to me, the Holy Spirit had been speaking to me to do a fast, and I was delaying it. And Prophetess was like, you should fast. And so I went into a 14-day fast. And during that fast, I literally just told God, just cleanse me, like, make me new, help me to forget everything that had happened, just reset me. That was basically what the fast was about. And on the Friday of that fast, when I went to work and I was reading my word that morning, in Luke chapter 13, which contains the story of the woman who was bent over for 18 years. When I read the line that Jesus told her, "Woman, thou art loosed from your infirmity," I literally felt that word, and like that was my Rema word.
The logos became Rema.
Yeah, that was my Rema word. So that Friday, when I was coming to church, I was like, it's about to go down.
Yeah, you had gotten to the point where the chains had to break at that point. You were fed up. Yeah.
I was fed up. I was desperate for deliverance. At first, I was afraid to get delivered because I didn't want people to look at me a certain type of way.
Yeah.
You know, like when I used to go to church when I was little and I would see people get delivered, I would be afraid of them afterwards. Like I wouldn't want to go near the person. So I was like, I don't want people to think any way of me. So I never wanted to go through deliverance. But that day was when I reached my limit. And I was like, yeah, I need to get delivered.
Yeah, Apostle always says that when the demon is your friend, when we cast it out, it won't go. It has to get to the point where, there's huge dislike and hate.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fasting that my wife did, even as a husband, I did only a part of it because it was a 14-day dry. Right? But that prepared her for the deliverance. Mm-hmm. That was the preparation for the deliverance.
Yeah. So that night came the fire night. When the word started, I had my pen and paper. I was ready. And when the prayer started is when...
it wasn't even a prayer about children, right?
It wasn't prayer about children. I don't even remember what that fire night was about, if I'm being honest. It didn't have anything to do with children, but I think I was so desperate for deliverance. You could have prayed about anything. Like you could have prayed about a dollar bill. I would have fell out. I kid you not. I was so ready. But that day is when I received my deliverance. And during the deliverance, it came out that this was a generational issue. And when I looked into my family, I realized that the women in my family were resisted in various different ways. Mm. I just never knew that mine was going to manifest as, in childbearing.
Yeah, and one of the things that whoever spoke said was that, yes, we were praying. They could hear our prayers, but our prayers were not targeted at the right people.
No.
That is why in warfare prayers, being precise is very important.
Wherever the children are right now, as a matter of fact, you have no choice but to bring them. Yes. Are you ready to pray?
Yes.
Say, oh Lord, as we begin to pray, for our sister, anywhere her children has been taken to, right now, let them come forth, 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 by fire, 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 by fire. Pray. Release! 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 Go! 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 Out! 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 Come out! Yes!
So it is April 23rd, 2021. I'm sitting in the car waiting for my husband as he protocols, and we just left Prayer Fest Friday night. I'm gonna hold God at his word. He is faithful. There is nothing that he cannot do. What God cannot do does not exist, and I trust that the Lord will do it. His name will be known across the universe. Everyone will hear of him when they hear of my testimony. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
And then, after that deliverance,
we actually thought, it will happen the next month.
In July.
In July, we had.
And it was our 3rd-year anniversary. We were like, July, the Lord is going to surprise us.
I mean, anniversary, as you mentioned, anniversary. The only time that we've actually stood in church to testify for anniversary was our first time, right? In 2020. And throughout all this trial and challenges, for me, it didn't make any type of sense coming up there to pretend as if everything is going on well with us. I felt like we had nothing to show. So there's no need for us to come and stand up there dressed up, thanking God for anniversary. There was nothing to show. You've been married for 2-3 years. There's nothing to show. So yeah, we thought the pregnancy would happen right after the deliverance. We're actually excited, looking forward to it. But a month passed.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
July came and went. Nothing happened. And so I kind of just put it in the back of my head, and I was like, I'm just gonna try again next year. Because I was like, yeah, I'm not about to. I was afraid of getting back into that place of obsession that I was in the years past. So I was like, I'm not gonna become consumed with it. I'm just gonna put it on the back burner and attack it next year. So that year or that month is when Prophetess told the Think Pink team that we were gonna enter into another dry fast. And I was like, Lord, help me, because I just finished a 14-day dry fast. And I was like, Lord, I don't know, you gotta give me strength. So the Think Pink team was fasting. We were doing our dry fast. And I was like, I'm not gonna pray for myself. I'm gonna pray for, the women that were newly married and the women I knew that were going through the same thing I was going through. So I prayed for them. And as I was praying for them, the Think Pink team was praying for me. And other people in the church were praying for me that I didn't even know, because of the theme of Think Pink, which was the birthing. And I told the Lord, as I'm serving this weekend, the only prayer I prayed for myself was, remember me. I was like, Lord, you have to remember me as I'm praying, as I'm fasting, as I'm interceding for others, as I'm serving during Think Pink. You have to remember me.
You know why I named Think Pink the birthing? The Lord told me, for Priscilla's sake, name it the birthing.
Remember last year, the theme for Think Pink was birthing. And after Prophetess had a meeting with the entire team in the boardroom, she was like, oh, and I'm putting y'all on a dry fast, nobody better eat. I was like, wait, nobody better eat. So, of course, walking with the woman of God, you just have to be spiritual. And this dry fast was not just a mere dry fast. It was like literally dying to self to see the word of the Lord come to pass for our sister Priscilla, who's also part of the team. But I'm not gonna lie, it was one of the hardest dry fasts I've ever done, because you're working your actual job, you're serving in the ministry, you're going up and down. And at that time, my apartment was like 3 flights of stairs. I'll go get water, dragging it up and down. Like, the dry fast was no joke. I'm not gonna lie, I'll be totally real.
I remember I was 8 months pregnant, and it would have been easy for me to be like, yeah, count me out. But understanding what I was doing it for, so that the Lord has blessed me to be in this situation, then the Lord can do it for my sister. So if it meant 7 days without food so that the Lord can bless my sister Priscilla, then I'll go for it. And by the grace of God, I too was able to go that week doing the dry fast for Sister Priscilla as well.
Yeah, I remember during the week when we would meet as a team to pray, each person had to ask the Lord for a topic for us to pray about. And I remember the topic that the Lord gave me was expecting the unexpected, and seeing that there would be women from all walks of life coming to Think Pink, expecting to encounter God or to receive anything from God. That specific topic was for Sis Priscilla, because we had all been praying for her and expecting the Lord to just blow our minds in what He will do in her life.
And to also know that we were praying for our sister, but we also had our mother backing us up as well, fasting with us, which is Prophetess. It really just showed that just keep pushing. And we also wanted to test God himself, just to show that if we are doing our part, Lord, just blow our minds and just show us what you really can do. So to even see this whole entire miracle take place, it really gingered our faith so much. And I can only like imagine what else, you know, the Lord will even do for all of us that's even sitting here too. So we just really thank God.
I think one thing that's important to note is the fact that though we were fasting towards Think Pink conference, we as individuals were burdened with the fact that Sis Priscilla was without child at the time, because we're entering into a conference that's entitled The Birthing, and we know that our sister of ours is without. And so we said, though we're going to pray towards the conference and the women come in, and for our leader, we are all burdened with the fact that we cannot go these next 4 days without hearing that she's conceived. And like Sister Judelle was saying, that's what kept us all going within ourselves. Because when one person was feeling weak, it was like, for the sake of the burden that we carry to see Sister Priscilla pregnant with a big belly wobbling around, we are going to continue to pray and fast. So though we all had the charge, or maybe the responsibility, I should say, of praying concerning Think Pink, praying for Sister Priscilla wasn't a responsibility. But we all took it as a burden of something that's needed to change, a testimony that we all needed to see occur. And it boosted all of our faith simultaneously as well, because we have witnessed God do a miracle right in front of our eyes.
I don't even know how many times as a man and wife, August, there was no time.
Yeah.
We were so busy.
I was consumed with Think Pink, so I was even barely home. I was running around doing stuff for Think Pink. And by the grace of God, somehow, some way, we got pregnant during Think Pink, which is amazing, because literally I was barely home.
Priscilla got pregnant right in the middle of Think Pink. When you calculate the date, it was Think Pink. The theme, the whole theme, it was for one person.
Got pregnant during Think Pink, and we found out a few weeks later. We had gone for my brother-in-law and my husband's brother's wedding in Baltimore. And when we were going, funny enough, I was expecting to get my period. So I asked my husband, should I pack up like the stuff that I need? And he said, out of faith, just leave it. And I went on my phone and I Googled the nearest Target to the hotel we were staying at. And I was like, oh, there's a Target across the street. So just in case of anything, I know I can go there. So we went through the weekend, nothing. We enjoyed ourselves that weekend. We weren't even thinking about baby anything. The day before we came home, we met this little girl, if you want to tell that story.
So we went to church. The wedding was almost, well, it was over.
The wedding was over,
It was over. We're just sitting there with my family, my wife. And out of nowhere, a little girl, probably like 5 years old, right, just walks all the way from the back, leaves her mom, and comes and stand right in front of me. And she was just like, I had never seen this girl anywhere in my life before. We've never crossed paths.
Never. Like, we didn't even know where the heck she came from.
I even had goosebumps. I'm like, sent you. She came to stand right in front of me like this. And she was just smiling.
Yeah.
That was a spiritual activity, but we didn't have an understanding about it. So it was later when we went home.
Yeah. And we asked her name. Her name was Purity, which was so weird. Her mom literally came and was like, I was looking for you. Where the heck did you go? And she didn't even want to leave. And so that to us was a sign. I wrote it down. I was like, something is about to go down, because there's no way that this random little girl found us in a room full of people, and she literally just came right in front of us. So, so we knew something was gonna happen. So when we got home, that morning was the morning of one of our KFT weddings. And I was like, let me just do this test so that when he wakes up and asks me if I did it, I can tell him I did it, and it was negative. And so I did the test and was mind blown when it actually was not negative.
I couldn't even believe my eyes. It was two of the darkest lines I've ever seen.
Like, there was no faking that. Like, that you didn't have to hold that one up to the light.
Nah, you didn't have to.
You knew. That one you knew. You knew.
Two of the darkest lines I've ever seen. It was so hard to even believe we had to get more tests too. confirm it.
I sent him. I was like, these tests are the expensive ones. Sometimes, you know,
it's inaccurate.
So I was like, go get the cheap ones, because the cheap ones, you got to be like 6 months pregnant for that joint to come back positive. So I was like, go get the cheap, like get the cheapest one you can find. And he went to the store. He got like a whole bunch of cheap ones, and they all came back positive.
And the first thing we did,
we called Apostle and Prophetess. We were so excited, and they didn't pick up. But then I sent them a picture of the positive test, and Prophetess lost it. She called me and she was screaming, and she was like, "Come over right now." Yeah. And we went over there, and they prayed for us. They were super, super excited. I think they were more excited than us. Like I think I was comprehending it.
We still couldn't believe it.
And Prophetess was like I think she already saw the child. She was already holding it in her head. She was already holding the child. And and one thing that she said that really stood out to me in all the prayers that they prayed for us, she said that the Lord has cemented your feet, and that there is nothing that anyone can do to prevent this child from being born.
So, what do you think? Girl. What do you think?
It's a boy.
We are having
we are likely to have a girl.
Elisha, mine likely female.
No.
She's spoiled already.
That is girl.
Tell you. I want. Thank you, Jesus.
It's okay. That is girl.
Daddy's girl. I told you, man. And she's gonna look just like you.
Yeah, and the pregnancy, for me as a man, was the smoothest pregnancy. My wife didn't have cravings. It was just smooth pregnancy throughout.
Yeah, it was a really, really good pregnancy. I didn't have any issues or any complications. It wasn't until the very end that really we started to, at the very end of the pregnancy, one of the days while all of the men were away at Puerto Plata, and I was here by myself. I went to a doctor's appointment, and they told me that my blood pressure was getting high. And at that time I was like 8 months pregnant, and they were like, your blood pressure is going up. And so I thought, of course my blood pressure is gonna be up. He's out living his best life. I'm here, I'm working. Why wouldn't my blood pressure be up?
I wasn't even doing it. Just ATV and stuff.
I was like, why wouldn't my blood pressure be up? So I told them, they scheduled me for another appointment. When he came back, he drove me there, and still they were like, your blood pressure is creeping up, your blood pressure is creeping up. And so they told me that we needed to deliver the baby right away. And when Prophetess had prayed for us, she was like, I see you delivering at 37 weeks.
Yes.
And literally it was 37 weeks that they were like, we need to get the baby out.
37 weeks.
Yeah, and they were like, you need to deliver. So that day we went to the hospital. We delivered her. And a few hours after delivering, we thought the fight is over. We've had our baby, we're done. There's nothing else that the enemy can do. And a few hours, I want to say 2 hours after we delivered, one of the nurses was like, her breathing is off.
It's off, yeah.
She was like, she's really struggling to breathe. And so she brought a doctor into the room to take a look at her. And the doctor was like, she needs to go to the NICU.
Yeah.
Which was hard for me to swallow, because I was like, we've had this child.
Yeah.
Granted, 37 weeks is a little bit early, but I was like, what do you mean she needs to go to the NICU? I never ever imagined that my baby would be in the NICU.
Right.
And so they took her away, and he went to go see her that night. And from the time they took her to the time he went to go see her, she was hooked up to all sorts of machines helping her breathe. Something was in her mouth helping her eat. Like, she was hooked up to a whole bunch of machines.
It's a terrible sight.
Yeah.
I was there every night. I was actually annoying the nurses over there.
Because the other parents weren't even there. You were there like all types of hours.
All times, playing Theophilos in the background, praying in tongues.
Praying over her.
I didn't care. I just had to be there.
Yeah. And when I went to go see her for the first time, I cried a lot because she was so small and she was hooked up to all of these machines and she could barely even cry because there was like all this stuff on her.
Yeah.
But throughout that time, I remember when we told, Apostle and Prophetess what was happening, we didn't hear from them for a couple of hours because they were so upset at the enemy for trying us again, that Prophetess was like, I needed to take some time to pray.
They were in Ghana then.
They were in Ghana.
And they didn't even have light for a time.
But they were praying for us.
Yeah.
They were praying for us. And Prophetess said, you're going to walk out of that hospital with your baby. And they told us the way she was progressing, they were like, it doesn't look like you guys can leave with her. But I held on to the word that Prophetess said, you guys are going to leave that hospital with your baby. And I think it was the day before we were discharged, they told us like, yeah, y'all not going with her.
No.
And that morning, Prophetess said, enter into a time of praise. So that day I praised and praised and praised and praised and praised. And the day we were to be discharged, it was a Sunday. And that morning is when they finally were like, she can go home with you.
Yeah, she made a miraculous recovery. Overnight. From tubes all over in her nose, mouth to
nothing.
Eating from a regular bottle.
Instead of with a tube.
A tube in there.
Yeah.
It was a happy moment for us.
Yeah.
To be able, it was, Apostle always says, labor room is warfare.
Yeah.
It was actually warfare.
Yeah.
We went to that war room and we came back victorious.
Yeah.
By God's grace. And it's not only our prayers, majorly it's the prayers of our leaders, Apostle and Prophetess, who have stood behind us throughout this journey. I still don't know how they find time and how they have so much capacity and heart for the people. So God bless you, Apostle. God bless you, Prophetess. This testimony is indeed a KFT, Kingdom for Tabernacle International Ministries testimony. There's something that personal prayers can do that corporate prayers cannot do. And there's also something that corporate prayers can do that personal prayers cannot do. And our testimony is an amalgamation of both of them.
Seeing Sis Priscilla with the baby in her hands is actually just proving God's faithfulness. As the lady spoke earlier, this is something that we all were praying for collectively. So the fact that something that she was tarrying for since she came into KFT, and now you're able to see the actual fruit of our prayers is just mind-blowing. So we thank God for what He is doing in her household.
Right. That's we was all texting each other like, yeah, because I said, and the gal, I can actually put up the screenshot. It was all like, nah.
Wait, nothing.
So we was all holding our excitement until she said it. So just so you know, when you first told me, it was a fake reaction.
Nothing killed me. We had that Saturday meeting, and then Alexis was like, everybody go around and pick a number, and then it was like, what are you doing? And then she was like, I'm doing the nursery in the room. We were all like,
oh yeah. So you wasn't gonna officially become
girl, we've been to, but it's like at this point we're just waiting for you to say it respectively. But I think we're all very excited either way. So
yeah, I think for me, like the song that literally dropped in my spirit was "What we waited for has come to pass. See what the Lord has done." And I think, thank you, Jadel. And I think for me, it literally proves that the Lord is the one leading Think Pink. The Lord is the one leading the Prophetess. She always say that the Lord gives her the theme of the next year, the year of the present conference. And I was like, Lord, wow, like there's nothing the Lord cannot do. Like Sister Priscilla is literally a sign and a wonder. Like I look at her and I'm even in awe. She probably think I'm a creep. I'm like, yo, we really prayed for this and now we're here. So it proves God's faithfulness.
I think also too, just seeing her reminds me that when you tarry, God answers your prayer. Reminds me of Hannah in the Bible. Like, she kept going back to Shiloh every year and God answered her. So seeing her, like, carrying her baby, just like, wow, if I continue to tarry, God will hear me. So yeah.
Also shows the power of corporate prayer, of sisterhood, that no man is an island. And when you're going through things, sometimes you need people and you need community. Not only to be there, because it's just nice when you get the testimony and we've all went through the trenches with you, but you know, it just shows the importance of godly community, shows the importance of having people who will pray with you, because sometimes when you don't pray, you have people who are praying with you. And one man of God said, when Jesus said it takes two to agree, he didn't say it takes two to believe, just two to agree for the thing to come to pass. So even if Sister Priscilla didn't have enough faith for herself, it was more than us sitting here even, you know, our faith alone. So knowing that even us as individuals, our faith alone has contributed to God doing something miraculous. I think Priscilla's baby, she has like 5 million aunties if she doesn't know. Like virtual aunties, in-person aunties, like everyone, that's everyone's baby at this point.
I think the most beautiful part of this testimony to me is how many people have rejoiced with us since they found out. Virtual members, people in person, the day that Prophetess announced it on the pulpit that we had delivered.
This is one of our most powerful testimonies here. Brother Elisha is now a part of the Father's Society. Vessels that hold rain. How many of you have seen us pray for them to the point they got annoyed? How many of you have seen it? Now! This is what God can do. Somebody came from London the other day and said, "Is Priscilla pregnant?" And I said, "Oh, you know her?" She said, "No, I've been watching KFT for years and I've seen you guys praying for them." If that don't move you, you imagine? This is one that we have all seen. How many of you remember the prayers and the deliverances and the this and the that? Now he is a part of the society. Vessels that hold rain. Do you understand? Baby shower after baby shower. This family was here looking sad, and the Lord said, "I will not withhold my rain any longer." Come on. I remember we had a baby shower, and I just saw Elisha's face, and I said, "Lord, you must do something." And to see his face on FaceTime, cheesing from ear to ear, because he is a vessel that holds rain. Oh, this one is personal for KFT. We all saw it. You remember the deliverance in 2:15. You remember the prayer after prayers. Now, we too, KFT, we get to experience the double-breasted God, the one who gives children. Hey!
I cannot tell you the amount of text messages I received that day. The amount of, as Prophetess always says, smoke screens that I received that day. People on Instagram, Facebook. I mean, people were hunting us down to say congratulations. And I think that was so beautiful for me to know, because throughout the 3 years, I felt so alone so many days that I would literally be like, no one cares about me, no one knows what I'm going through, no one is thinking of me. And to know that all these years people were actually praying for us and thinking of us, they just didn't say it. To know how many people are rejoicing with us now, to even get this platform, to even share our testimony is huge.
I think I'll end with saying that, you know, our testimony, God wanted us to get to a point in our spiritual life, it's like playing a game where you have a starting point and an end point. But in between it is the journey. And in certain games, in that journey, what you do is you collect points. You collect points to build up yourself. God wanted to build us up to that point where the testimony, to the point where He alone can take the glory, to a point where we ourselves will not mess up the testimony. So I know there are some of us who may be watching this, may watch it later on, that are going through the same thing that we went through. My word of encouragement is keep on collecting the coins. Keep on building up. There's a point that is coming that you will also testify, and God will get the glory. In the name of Jesus.
Amen. And I guess what I will say is, like you said, the Lord really wanted to build us up to a point, because when the Lord gives you such a testimony, He doesn't want you to fumble with it. And to know the caliber of child that the Lord has even chosen to give us, woe unto us if after we had her, we took her as a regular baby and we didn't know about the ministry that she would walk in, and we didn't pray towards it. Imagine having a child that the Lord has called a prophet to the nations, and you're praying 10 minutes a night. Like, you could destroy that child's destiny.
Definitely. There's no way you can even bring that up in the Lord. You would just mess up that child.
So I think that the Lord knew what He was doing the entire time, and He wanted us to get to a point where we solely relied on Him. And that's the point that we got to when He finally released the child. And He didn't want to share His glory with anyone, because from the beginning to end, this whole entire testimony was purely just God dealing with us and doing it with us and making us a sign and a wonder. And so, like my husband said, to anyone who is going through it now, my word of advice or my word of encouragement to you is that, as you can see with our testimony, the Lord will never fail you. The Lord will never disappoint you. It may not seem like it in the moment when you're going through it, but when you reach the end of it and you look back, you will thank God for every single thing that He put you through. You will thank God for every single hurdle. You will thank God for every tear that you cried, because you realize that none of it was in vain. Amen.
Amen.
What is hard for you to do? It doesn't exist, so it can never ever exist, so Jesus, you do not lie, you do not lie. What is hard for you to do? It doesn't exist, so it can never ever exist, so you do not lie, you do not lie. What is hard for you to do? It doesn't exist, so it can never ever exist, so mama, you do not lie, you do not fail. What is hard for you to do? It doesn't exist, so it can never ever exist, so